It was the morning of October 12, 1492. On a small island in the sea, people noticed something strange. Far away, they saw huge ships. They had never seen such things before. Imagine their surprise. It looked as if something had come down from the sky. They gathered at the shore. Who were these men standing on the ships? Why were their clothes so bright? Why did they carry sharp weapons? Some islanders swam into the water to get closer. A few even climbed onto the ships. Their faces were full of innocence and wonder. They greeted the strangers with open hearts. They brought food, drinks, and even their colorful parrots. In return, Columbus and his men gave red hats and small bells. The bells rang, and the people laughed with joy. For them, it was magic. This island was called Guanahani by the locals. Columbus renamed it San Salvador. It was small, about 21 kilometers long and 8 kilometers wide. It had forests, lakes, and hills, a peaceful place. Today it is part of the Bahamas. The islanders lived in thatched huts. They grew corn. They wore simple clothes. Life was quiet and modest. When the strangers came, they saw them as guests, even as friends. They had no idea of what was about to come. But Columbus thought differently. He looked at the people and saw no palaces, no temples, no iron weapons. Their lives were simple, yet he noticed one thing: gold earrings. This made him remember the stories of Marco Polo. Polo had written about Cipango, or Japan, and islands rich with treasure. Columbus thought, could this be the place? Am I standing at the edge of Asia? Now this makes us wonder, was it true, or was Columbus only chasing a dream? He stayed only a short time, but before leaving, he tried to collect as much gold as possible. The people gave freely. They did not know how valuable it was to him. In his diary, Columbus wrote that these people were without clothes, without weapons, and so simple that only 50 men could control them. So here the story takes a turn. The islanders saw friends. Columbus saw gold and power. And this raises a bigger question. Was this really Japan, as Columbus believed? Or had he stepped into a world he did not yet understand? Columbus kept watching closely. Again he wrote in his diary that only 50 men could rule these people. If you asked them for something, they gave it. They never said no. But this kindness became their weakness. Columbus and his men went into homes. They searched baskets and turned things over, looking for gold. The people stood there, confused. They did not fight. They smiled and kept saying, "Welcome." Days passed. Columbus found no treasure, only a few earrings. So he decided to move further, towards Cipango, Japan. But before sailing, he captured some natives to take as prisoners. He thought, I will teach them some Spanish. They will be my guides to Asia. Here the story takes a curious twist. The captives had never heard of Japan or China, but they understood Columbus wanted a big island. And yes, they knew of one. They guided him to a land we know today as Cuba. On October 28, 1492, Columbus arrived in Cuba. He believed Japan was just ahead. But what did he find? No gold, no great cities, only people with small earrings of gold. This made him restless. He thought, maybe this is China, the land Marco Polo called Cathay. He searched for the magnificent cities Polo described. But no matter how far he went, there was nothing. Now, this raises another big question. Had Marco Polo lied? Or had Columbus misunderstood the stories? Where was the promised gold? Frustrated, Columbus set sail again on December 5th. He wanted to find the famous Chinese city called Olive, today known as Quanzhou. But strong winds changed his path. his ships drifted to another island about 100 kilometers away. The locals called it Haiti. Columbus renamed it Hispaniola. He landed there on December 6, 1492. And here began one of the darkest chapters in history. Historians call it the American Holocaust, the genocide of the Native Americans. Hispaniola was the second largest island in the West Indies. Today it is the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Back then it was one land, home to about 800,000 Arawak people. The Arawaks welcomed Columbus warmly, just like the others had done. They offered food, gifts, and smiles. Columbus, however, searched for gold. His mind also turned to the Bible. He wondered, could this be the land from where King Solomon brought gold, gems, and spices? Could this even be the kingdom of Sheba? So here we must pause and ask, was Hispaniola truly a land of endless gold? Or was Columbus still chasing a dream that never existed? But here is the problem. Hazrat Solomon's kingdom was in Palestine, far away from Hispaniola. Why did Columbus make such a link? Perhaps because he believed that beyond the Bible's stories no other world existed. This belief guided him. He told himself, if the Bible speaks of gold and gems, then this must be the same land. But was he right? Then came what he thought was proof. Columbus saw tiny gold particles in the rivers. A local chief even gave him a mask of gold. That was enough to fire his imagination. He thought, if there is one mask, there must be more. Are the natives hiding it? But here the story changes. The truth was very different. In reality, Hispaniola had only small traces of gold, hidden deep in sand and streams. There was no treasure waiting to be picked up. And yet, isn't it strange? Today we know Hispaniola has billions in gold, silver and copper, but back then nobody could reach it. So what did Columbus do next? He planned to return to Spain, bring more men, and search the island fully. But before he left, trouble began. His men fought with the locals. In one clash, 2 natives were killed, only because they refused to hand over their bows and arrows. Small fights, yes, but don't you wonder, was this the first sign of something far more dangerous to come? Still, Columbus believed Hispaniola was his land of gold. He needed a base, and fate gave him one. One of his ships broke near Santa Maria, Haiti. The crew used its wood to build a small fort. They called it Fort Navidad, with strict orders: find gold. On January 16, 1493, he sailed back to Spain. But he did not go alone. He forced some natives onto his ships as slaves. The journey was cruel. Many of them died in the freezing conditions. Still, Columbus carried a little gold and some spices, enough to silence his critics. So what story did he tell in Spain? Columbus proudly claimed he had found a new route to Asia, and that the lands were overflowing with gold. The rulers believed him. They gave him the grand title of Admiral of the Sea. Suddenly, Columbus became part of Spain's aristocracy. Feasts and celebrations honored him. He was hailed as a hero. But here is the twist. Behind the cheers, there were whispers. People mocked him too. Why? Because on Justone Island, his arrival had already cost the lives of countless natives. So now we must ask, why did this destruction begin so quickly? How could the people of the New World face guns and swords with only herbs and simple bows? What charges were later brought against Columbus? And how did his final days end? The answers will unfold in the next episode of the History of America.